Greetings everyone, hey, how you doing? It's Matt Sella. Long time no see folks, but DuckTales has finally returned. And today, my friend Marc and I, who is joining via satellite radio, will be reviewing the premiering episodes of Season 3, Episode 1 and 2, titled Challenge of the Senior Junior Woodchucks and Quack Pack. Aren't you guys excited, folks? Marc, are you excited?
I'm so excited.
I don't believe you, but let's find out for sure, because I don't know if I'm excited. But I am, or am I not?
I'm saying we're excited to talk about cartoons.
That is true. With the way the world is going, I just want to enjoy all the cartoons. Now, before we begin, as it may apply in this review, Marc and we were actually expecting the Season 3 premiere episodes to be a two-parter, but it turns out it's actually two separate episodes that just kind of premiere on the same date. Which you gotta admit, Marc, that was kind of weird.
It was, because, the show is no stranger to doing two-part episodes, and a recurring theme of this review for us is going to literally be managing expectations, I think is a fair statement to say. So, yeah, no, if you started this thinking, because it was a two-episode release, that, this was going to be a cool, connected story, that doesn't happen, but some good things happen, some bad things happen, subjectively, of course, and we're just here along for the ride.
And so, folks, if you're only here to hear our opinions on the Quack Pack episode, then I recommend you go to this timestamp I'll be putting on the video. For those who listen via podcasts, don't know what to tell you there.
Wow, would you look how far into the video it is? We apparently didn't shut up.
Yes, sadly, we have a lot to say about these episodes. But anywho, otherwise than that, we're going to be talking about two separate episodes and putting it together because I don't have time to split this video. Believe me, I don't have the time. And before we begin, our DuckTales conversations are usually spoiler talks, so if you haven't seen the episodes, you should probably go watch them now and then come back to hear our opinions. So Marc, why don't you let us know, what is Season 3, Episode 1, titled Challenge of the Senior Junior Woodchucks all about?
Well, Matt, I'm glad you asked. In this episode, Huey races against Violet, who apparently has been a secret junior woodchuck this whole time. Very suspicious. In a challenge to be named a senior junior woodchuck, while Scrooge and his family search for a secret woodchuck treasure being led by a surprise cameo by a really obscure theme park character. And Huey has a breakdown and sees things and hears a voice from the Junior Woodchuck guidebook, who I think was a reference to the old Mr. Paperclip from Windows, but at the same time was voiced by the guy who, at least sounded like he was voiced by the guy who played Bill Dauterive in King of the Hill, or Bud Gleeful on Gravity Falls, if we want to have a Disney reference in there. So that was funny.
To add on to that, Marc, I actually looked up that guy's voice actor. He also played that dude with the glasses in Dodgeball movie.
Really?
Yeah, he's the guy who's like, you can play dodgeball.
Ah, that's amazing. And on the way, aside from having a complete and total emotional breakdown and in some ways betraying the code of the Junior Woodchuck, Huey must face things like electric rain and, a weird bear that kind of looked like it was part hyena. I'm not really sure about that.
It was a strangely spotted bear.
Right?
And did it look a little mangy to you? I don't think it was, but I got that vibe.
I got the vibe of mange. It's weird to say, but I did. And, we also find out Launchpad was always a den leader for the Junior Woodchuck, right? Like, this wasn't something we just learned now. It's been a while since we've had good DuckTales. I need a refresher.
Yeah, no, I remember I was rewatching the seasons leading up to this review, and yes, he is established to be a den mother type character.
Okay, cool. But also, there's just all kinds of... The Junior Woodchuck organization is way more interesting than we once thought. In fact, their founder was an explorer who Scrooge greatly admired growing up and read her adventures as a young boy in the Highlands. So with that very long brief synopsis out of the way, Matt, what did you think of the first episode, Challenge of the Senior Junior Woodchuck?
So I'm going to refrain from talking about the second episode, Quack Pack, as much as I can. This episode, kind of kicking off the new season, I felt kind of was a bit underwhelming, in my opinion. We were kind of talking about what's going to be the ultimate setup for this season, and the way this episode ends does set up for how the second season ended with Fowl. However, we got to that point through its plot B, which happens to be Scrooge, Della, and the kids, minus Huey, going on a little adventure to follow the trail of mysteries that were never solved, but were being sidetracked by that bird. And it was pretty established at the beginning that this is a plot B. And the main plot was Huey trying to get his senior title. But the way the episode ended, led to a really important artifact that will lead to the overall arc of the story. And I don't know, I just kind of wish there was a little bit more emphasis on it and less of a surprise. But it didn't bother me that greatly. You know what it reminded me of, Mark? It actually kind of reminded me of that one episode we watched of The Owl House, where Luce and her friends were off doing something, and Ida had to look over the bat babies. And at the end of that, the Bat Queen ended up giving her an artifact that will apparently play a big role later on. And that was also a plot B.
That's true.
So I don't know, like, because I don't watch a lot of television shows, I wonder if that's just a normal thing that happens when it comes to serialized shows, that sometimes plot Bs have a greater significance than the plot A.
Oh, that's possible. I think it just depends on the show, quite honestly.
But overall, I think the episode was fine. A little dull for a Kickstarter of the season, in my opinion. But it was kind of cute to see ambitions that Huey had to be a Woodchuck senior level. I guess he's been at it for so long. And I could kind of see why he was frustrated to see Violet come out of nowhere and say like, oh yeah, I was a junior Woodchuck as well. You just didn't see me because I was off doing other things that were more important. And I could see how that kind of rubbed him the wrong way and get a little jealous of her. But the way the episode kind of wraps up with her saying like, hey, I've been trying to do this for the last 3 years and I got my failure badge, but you know how it is. Junior Woodchuck, if you fail, that's just an opportunity to grow further. So, and that's not the exact phrase.
No, the moral of the episode, at least for Huey, is, failure is a part of the learning experience. And, it's honestly probably, when you think about it in retrospect, a good thing for Huey to learn given how high strung he is.
Absolutely. And I'll say one of the sweeter moments, even though I think it's a little subtle and I kind of liked it, but at the same time obvious, is when Huey was awarded the failure badge, Launchpad was like, oh, that's okay, dude. Take one of mine. And then he opens up the patch and there's like dozens of failure badges that he had.
That was both very cute and actually made me laugh.
So it's like, yeah, no, it's a failure. It's a common thing that happens to everybody, even the more oafish type who are actually den mothers now or whatever he calls himself. But like I said, as a kicker to this new season, I don't know, I kind of wish we had a more solidified setup to what we should expect throughout the season.
And that's very fair. I mean, it is kind of important that, the founder of the Junior Woodchucks lost guidebook, or lost a notebook, contains all these hidden treasures and stuff. And that Fowl, of course, wants it because they're foul. And, if as we soon find out with like literally the first treasure they find in the next episode, not to jump far ahead, like, there's some cool treasure out there. That being said, I was originally very confused with this bird that shows up in the episode.
Pray tell.
I wasn't sure what to make of it. It looked like it was a weird bird that kind of cartoonishly popped in and out of the background and foreground, making weird noises. And I was like, this feels like a knockoff or an official version of like the Araquan bird. And weirdly enough, it wasn't. It was actually, and a lot of the elements from the Junior Woodchuck stuff in this episode, a character from Tokyo Disneyland that appears as an animatronic on some nature trail they have in Frontierland with the Junior Woodchucks. So like, not a cameo I was expecting, actually kind of learned something, which was really cool. Also, like, Tokyo Disneyland, just has animatronics out and about. I wish we had more of those in the States, but this isn't about theme parks. This is about DuckTales. And I would say it was a bit surprising that Violet was a Junior Woodchuck, because I didn't quite get that vibe from her from what we've seen. But, I liked it. And I was very happy for her that she, was able to get the promotion and, Huey learned something. And I do think it was a little weird that for how important this notebook is going to be going forward, it really kind of was on the back burner for the episode. I will echo that statement.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because Violet, she's always been kind of like interested in the occult and the supernatural. Like, she was clearly a researcher when she first appeared.
Right. That's why I don't know, why it just came odd to me that she was like also apparently very outdoorsy. I didn't take her for that type. But, shame on me for, assuming stuff, I guess.
Shame. For shame. I was half expecting there to be some kind of caricature version of Russell from Up in there as like one of the Junior Woodchucks or something, and like had his mom and maybe like Doug in the audience somewhere. I don't know. I think that would have been a cute like little Easter egg cameo.
That would have been funny. I was expecting cameos. I mean, if it weren't for the fact the bird invoked Araquan veins in me, I was kind of expecting Humphrey the bear.
Oh, yeah.
You probably most recently remember him from the Three Caballeros as the bearskin rug.
Yeah.
But I was kind of half expecting him, weirdly enough. Or even actually because it was, outdoorsy, kind of reminds me of Tahoe and, American forest and stuff like that. I was half expecting if this was kind of going to be where we were first teased of Chip and Dale even. But I mean, they're definitely going more the rescuers route as opposed to the classic route. But I don't know, like,
Well, we'll talk more about that in our next episode review, because I'm sure that's going to come up a little bit.
it will.
But overall, Mark, how did this episode make you feel?
If it was any other where in this season, I probably would say this was like a perfectly, and it is a perfectly fine, good, if not great episode. But like as the season starter, it did kind of throw me through a loop. And that was just me not probably managing my expectations.
And I fully agree with you. It definitely didn't really kick off the season the way I wanted it, but at least we got the second episode to look forward to.
True.
So, with that being said, folks, we are going to move on to episode 2. But if you have not seen episode 2, then I recommend you just jump in that comment section and let us know, did you like the first episode, Challenge of the Senior Junior Woodchucks? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Share your thoughts and join that conversation. For now, Mark and I, we're going to move on towards Quack Pack. So you have been warned. Welcome to the second part of our DuckTales premiering episode review.
Well, Nat, I'm feeling a little nostalgic for a simpler time, a 90s kind of time. You wouldn't happen to have any sort of recommendations for that, would you?
Perhaps I do, perhaps I don't. Let me give you the quick synopsis of what Quack Pack Episode 2 is all about. The family is not quite themselves as they soon discovered the planned family photo shoot might just be part of a bigger wish gone wrong. And that's a general synopsis of the Quack Pack episode, which, to kick things off, is centered around the 90s and has a bit of that television nostalgia vibe to it. Mark, why don't you let the fine folks know, how did this episode leave the impressions upon ya?
I have never felt a more divisive type of feeling between the first half of a 30-minute episode and the second half of a 30-minute episode, let alone on this show.
Dude, tubular, man.
I don't know, 90s noises. It was, I mean, first of all, real crazy. It won't spoil anything yet. We now literally have a DuckTales episode where two people who have voiced Sonic the Hedgehog were in the same room.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Let's get that out of the way. And weirdly enough, I mean, if we talked about our expectations for what the new characters and when they would be introduced, I wouldn't have expected Goofy and the genie from the DuckTales movie to have been in the same episode. And before we continue, let me just make things perfectly clear, especially since we've mentioned a wish. Don't worry, Goofy's not a weird wish illusion. Goofy is real. Everyone calm down, because I was horrified of that being the case, of him not being real.
Thank the goddamn gods.
Thanks, Storkules.
Because we were kind of talking about earlier before where you were kind of getting the vibe that Goofy might actually just be an illusion established somehow. But again, we're going to go straight into spoilers here. Goofy actually was there and came out after the wish was undone. So he wasn't an illusion. He's an actual canon character, which you were telling me how nervous you were leading up to that reveal. And I told you that's how I felt when we first got a glimpse of Darkwing Duck, where I was like, no, I want him to be an actual canon character in this universe. No,
I truly felt your pain in that. It was a horrifying thing.
But luckily enough, not to like get off topic real quick, but the way they handled introducing a new type of Darkwing Duck in this universe, I think really worked within the confines of this universe. So I'm glad that happened.
And it gave us a great introduction for Negaduck.
Too true, dude. Too true.
Speaking of, if you haven't seen our review of that episode, rest assured it's like the most viewed video on this channel. Go give it a look.
Evidently so. It really is.
So like clearly when we say that was a great episode of DuckTales, the rest of the world agreed with us. I'm not saying that means we are prophets who truly speak for DuckTales, but if we were, you would watch that video and agree with us. Now there's just going to be nothing of people being like, no, this is stupid. How dare you in the comment section of either this or that video.
But no, seriously, let's talk about more of what didn't work for you, Mark, in this episode of Quack Pack.
Honestly, most of the sitcom stuff, as both of us being people who I think it's safe to say grew up in the heyday of the, not necessarily the heyday, but the apex of what a sitcom was and what it was for this time period in entertainment. I kind of was, and I think it was kind of poking fun about it because there is some stuff about it that is, cliche. It's overused. Everyone's got a catchphrase. There's always some wacky, weird, nonsensical noise or whatever. And, the studio audience just never shuts up. But it was like if you were a kid and you were not born in the 90s and you would have no idea what any of this is, and it didn't feel, and maybe I'm completely wrong when I say this, but it just felt like it felt like this was written by someone who heard of a 90s sitcom, not who watched a 90s sitcom. And kind of felt a little it dragged on for too long too. Like and the pacing didn't help. You know off the bat something is weird and something's gone wrong. And for what it takes to finally get there, for things to then get off the rails, kind of just felt like it was spinning its wheels. I'm going to level with you there.
I agree. And I think what I can add to that is I actually didn't quite care for the sitcom setup. And here's my reason why. Yes, I grew up in the age of sitcoms where I really enjoyed the show Friends, Frasier, Everybody Loves Raymond, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. That's a sitcom.
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is very good. It doesn't count, and this isn't the sitcom show because it's not in this time frame anyway. But like Cheers is another great show.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the 80s and 90s definitely has that down to a T. That was pretty much the apex of sitcoms. Now, the reason why I personally believe sitcoms in those character formats work is because a lot of it comes down to dialogue and how the characters deliver themselves. And so when we had the Duck family in this sitcom setting, I kind of reflected on it and I thought back about how the dialogue appealed to me in terms of humor throughout the season. And I noticed I never really laughed at any of the dialogue deliveries, joke deliveries, or what have you. The only time I really laughed was at Launchpad, but that was like only 25% of his dialogue because it was unexpected and well delivered.
Like a sitcom should.
However, like I said before, sitcoms solely rely on setup, expectations, and punchline. I'm not saying I'm a professional in knowing how sitcoms work. I'm just saying that's generally why they work. Now, these characters, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, the Duck family, they're not really known for that. They're known more to be appealing to kids and have that sense of adventure that we don't quite get much these days. And I think that's where their strength and enjoyment of entertainment comes from. And unfortunately, if you put that in a sitcom format, and I know I'm taking this way more seriously than the episode actually warrants it, but I'm just saying the reason why it kind of like dulled me out is because of how much it did not work because these characters were not meant for that format.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, I remember when the episode started and we were getting a setup for the photo thing, I kind of checked out from the dialogue. Like just with the constant laugh track happening. And yes, to go back to what you were saying, kids who didn't grow up in this age who heard of sitcoms but never actually watched them. I have an animator friend who's much younger than I am. And I talked to him once about like shows that I liked. He tried to watch them and he just said, I don't know, that laugh track audience thing, it just kind of kills it for me. Like I can't really get into the setting or the jokes because it's there. And I told him, yeah, that's fine. I mean, I remember Malcolm in the Middle was like an introduction to one of those multicam sitcom things without the live audience. And that became like a really big thing in the early 2000s.
Yeah, and things like The Office and Modern Family definitely popularized that. I think even more than Malcolm in the Middle. But that is fair to say, I think it kind of started that if you were to look for the genesis.
And I definitely think that contributed to like younger audiences not really getting into that style of humor. So I think that's essentially why I'm going on this long rant saying the humor for that sitcom didn't work because they were just taking these characters who were used to just doing their regular thing, but then suddenly throwing a laugh track in there and trying to be artificial. I didn't really feel like there was enough intelligence and delivery there to really warrant that, or at least to try to make it funny. It felt more like a parody than a tribute.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's what they were going for, but like it didn't feel like it had enough material to even justify how, in the grand scheme of things, it's a 25-minute episode. So like how much time is actually dedicated to it is, minuscule, but like it overstayed its welcome very quickly for me.
I agree. And like I said, I checked out from the dialogue. I didn't even know they were doing a family shoot. Like I knew they were setting something up, but as the laugh track kept rolling in, like almost every other line, I just tuned out for a moment. I was like, oh, okay, something's happening. Where is this going? I actually had to go back and rewatch the introduction just to know exactly what led up to these events.
No, yeah.
Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm a little too old-fashioned and they just didn't execute it right in my mind. Even though I think you're right. That was the point.
Oh, yeah. And like as we mentioned, this all came about because one of the treasures they were looking for from the Junior Woodchuck journal is the lamp, originally from the DuckTales movie that has Gene the Genie in it. And one of the reasons all this 90s stuff is happening is because, one, last time his lamp was used was in the 90s, and he also just happens to be voiced by Jaleel White, a.k.a. Steve Urkel and Sonic the Hedgehog.
What a twist.
It is a twist, and not how I would have expected the character to show up, if I'm going to be honest. And, this is the whole thing I've even mentioned before, managing expectations. Like,
You know what's a little bit of a stretch there, Mark?
what?
When you're saying you didn't expect it to happen like this, looking back now, this reminds me of one episode of Supernatural where one of the characters wished they didn't have this hunter's life and wish they had a normal life. And they suddenly wake up in like this white picket fence setting where he and his brother are just living happy, normal lives. But as the episode goes on, he notices that something's really wrong and it all came down to a djinn creating this illusion. So this Quack Pack episode, maybe indirectly, was inspired by plots like that in the past.
That would be interesting. So yeah, Steve Urkel's the genie. The best part and where the episode really starts is when ultimately they literally look literally at the fourth wall and they see the studio audience, and they're these horrible fleshy creatures that laugh and smile over anything.
Horrible, fleshy-faced creatures.
Yeah, otherwise known as humans.
Oh man, dude, when that reveal happened, that's when this episode took a complete 180 for me. As soon as we got out of that confine of a setting and suddenly humans was a thing, I couldn't keep myself down. I just stopped. I was laughing nonstop, man. Just how, and what's funny too about it is I was half expecting the audience to be like regular citizens who were just like zombie or digital whatever. But then when they showed they were humans, I was like, oh, okay, that's a thing now.
Yep, and they were horribly freaked out by these things, as they should be.
Yes, they really should be afraid of us. They really should.
So eventually they have to fight their way out with the studio audience, and you get to see them, beating the crap out of men, women, children, and it's just great. It's wonderful. And it couldn't have been done because obviously it couldn't. He passed years ago now, may he rest in peace. But like, as much as I get why the 90s thing works, as one, a reference to the date the movie came out with Genie and, him being voiced by Steve Urkel, like I kind of couldn't help but wonder, and I sort of armchaired it to you, Matt, like if he had been alive, how funny would it have been if Gene was actually voiced by Robin Williams and they just doubled down on the 90s almost in a way?
I think that would have been hilarious, but I also wonder if that would have been way too obvious.
Maybe, but like...
But at the same time, you got Don Cheadle in there voicing Donald when he's not around. So I think that would have been a hilarious, like, cool cameo Easter egg thing.
Yeah, and also, we should make a point of mentioning this. This is all just because Donald wished he had a normal family life. And apparently he wishes for that 5 times a day. He just never expected it to actually happen.
Yeah, he really is a broken character if you really think about it.
He is. And I mean, we'd be remiss to mention several cameos, of course. A lot of the characters are wearing their classic outfits.
Some are reimagined as well, right? Like Webby didn't have that look.
No, and there's like even some of the outfits the nephews wear are from past things, if I'm not mistaken. But
I assumed it was from Quack Pack, some of those outfits.
To a degree, yeah. But again, just Goofy is not a part of this wish. He's a real person. I'm assuming that means Donald knows him and they're friends, and that makes me happy. And because of this, Max and PJ and Roxanne are also real, and there's stuff to suggest that the Goof Troop movie is canon, and I'm happy.
Yeah, no, we were talking about before we started recording where maybe in part of like Donald's wish, part of his perfect life is also having his best friend with him. And since it's obviously implied that Goofy is part of it, and Donald does take what Goofy says seriously.
Goofy has a great bit about, family in this, and it's wonderful.
Absolutely. And I'm glad it was real because once the wish was undone at the very end, he was there saying, oh, how sweet or cute or whatever.
No, yeah.
And then Della's like, wait, Goofy was here the whole time?
Yeah.
And then the genie was kind of making like a Ron Williams style joke where it's like, of course he was here. Think of all the merchandising. And I'm paraphrasing, but...
I could just hear Robin delivering that line. And, this is not a knock on, Jaleel White at all, but like, I just love Robin Williams.
Yeah. I mean, like, this might be controversial, but even if like Ron Williams was alive but wasn't able to do it, I mean, you could have gone with Dan Castanella in a way and not sound exactly like Genie, but he's a pretty talented voice actor as well. And I think he could have done like a bridge between it. But I'll be honest with you, I actually didn't notice that was Jaleel White doing the voice.
I didn't really either, which is surprising because it's not like it's his first. It's not like he's unknown in the realm of voice acting, really. So
maybe he's just too good at it because the first time we really hear him talk, he was a photographer with like a
French accent,
a thick French accent. So maybe that's why I didn't connect the dots at the time.
My God, we thought he was underwhelming, but at the same time, he was actually that brilliant.
Maybe he was. Maybe he really was.
Maybe this is a Twilight thing where the girl playing the main character, I forget her name, she's actually such a good actress that she actually gave a bad performance because the character was so bad. This has layers, Matt. We've dug too deep.
Wow. But to conclude on like Donald's wish and the fact that Goofy is indeed canon, at least well enough as he appears, I did kind of mention to you before saying like, okay, so let's assume Donald brought Goofy in because he's his best friend and values him a lot. And if that means that the Goofy movie is canon, as we reaccount, where Goofy said he's going camping or on a road trip, Max says like, hey, bring your best friend. Is that Donald Duck? I'm paraphrasing, of course. But if we remember during the Open Road song, we actually saw Donald hanging out with Mickey going on a road trip themselves.
Yeah, hitchhiking.
But if this wish was implying his perfect normal life and that involved Goofy, what does that say about Mickey Mouse?
Yeah. Did they have a falling out? Or are we just still living this weird world where Disney won't let Mickey be in fun stuff like it was back in the 80s and 90s on TV? Look it up. Disney literally had it that Mickey couldn't be in cartoons. Like like bonkers and stuff. It's crazy. Like they barely, like if I'm not mistaken, like they fought just to get Donald in for a few scenes in the original DuckTales, like as legacy characters. It's amazing.
Yeah, I really don't know what Disney thinks nowadays. Because I mean, like Mickey has his own unique short cartoons, and Mickey is like mistreated like crazy. He's being tossed around, beaten up. I don't see what the problem is. Putting him in DuckTales would be great. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. Who knows?
It would just be a lot of fun. And I hope we get more Goofy.
I certainly think we will. But overall, Mark, I think I'm going to conclude here because we were going on for a while. I think Quack Pack had a very sluggish launch, but as soon as the audience turned on them and we finally broke from the set, or at least broke the fourth wall, quote unquote, that's when it really started to become fun. And I think that kind of backs up my claim of why these characters work more in that adventurous format and less in the traditional sitcom style dialogue humor setting. But that's just my opinion.
Let me run this one by you then, Matt. Let me do a little more armchairing with you here before we sign off. How would you have preferred if this episode was a 2-part episode and the start of season 3? Like that's assuming a lot, but like what do you think of that?
Well, that would be tough because like if we assume that this episode is split into 2 parts, that would mean the first part would be the first half that we don't like.
Right.
So could we really tolerate that for a 22-minute long episode?
My thing would be I hope we wouldn't. I'd hope that would be resolved or come to fruition with the studio audience, like at the same pace. But then like if at the other half of this episode, it was just we had a little more time with Goofy even. And like we even said how we really liked his speech about family in this, but it felt like it could have just used a little more time to really sink in. Like if we had more time for that, we even had more time for the genie kind of to be a character even. Like that could have been interesting, I think. That's a big if though. Like there's a lot of asterisks to what I just said, and I admit that. And hindsight is 20/20.
Absolutely. And to be perfectly frank with you, this particular episode, the narrative behind it, I don't think warrants a 2-parter anyway. Because I was going to say one thing, pacing wise, I think this episode did fine. It actually kind of felt like a lot was happening in this episode, despite how much at the beginning didn't really appeal to me.
Right.
But stretching it to like 22 episodes, I think would have really muddied it out. And I feel like something grander should have happened. But overall, I mean, I think, I'll be honest with you, I feel like Quack Pack should have been the premiering episode. And the Senior Junior Wood Scout one should have been the second episode, in my opinion.
All right. That's fair. That's fair.
But any closing thoughts?
I think we're good to take it away, Matt. Let me just ask you this. Are you glad to be back?
Oh, abso-floggin'-lutely. And with that being said, we're glad to have you guys back talking about DuckTales. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. What did you think of this episode, Quack Pack? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Share your thoughts. Join the conversation. Be sure to like, subscribe, ring that bell to be notified when new videos drop. And if you want to support me directly, please consider going to my Patreon or do a one-time donation at my Streamlabs. Links are in the description below. This is Matt Sella.
And this is 90s Marc.
Thanking you all for tuning in.